Now before we begin everybody, I just want to say a huge thank you to PlayStation for actually sending me an early review copy of Marvel's Spider-Man exclusively for PlayStation 4. Without them, I would have never been able to actually be able to review the game early for you guys, and I'm so honored that I'm actually one of the few who's able to have access to an early review of this incredible, amazing game. And again, all the footage that you're about to see of new clips of the game is from the exact launch PS4 with the share feature that it holds. But before we begin, everybody, I have one question for you. What does it mean to be a hero?
Excuse me, late for work! Coming through!
Looking good, Spidey!
Hello, New York! Haha! New suit, same old me.
Well, for one, being a hero means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people may think that a hero's main purpose is to stylishly traverse throughout the city while wearing brightly colored spandex. And some others think that it's their sole responsibility to protect their homes no matter what the cost. But at the end of the day, being a hero is simply being able to stand up for others and be willing to fight for what's right. That's what being a hero is all about, and the wonderful minds at Insomniac and Marvel showcase this beautifully within their unique take of our one and only favorite web-slinger.
I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
No pressure, right?
Right off the bat, Marvel's Spider-Man does everything right, showcasing these characters that we know and love in new ways that we've never seen before to fully utilizing every single one of Spider-Man's powers. Take the one and only Peter Parker, for example. Instead of being a high schooler, he is now a 23-year-old college graduate who has a job as a scientist. This new take on Peter Parker not only makes for some really cool gameplay segments, but it also showcases the duality between his normal life as Peter Parker and his superhero life as Spider-Man, as well as the relatability that both characters have.
I've got a few minutes before work. I'm gonna look around, see if there's anything else I can do to help you out.
Oh, you don't have to.
I know. I want to.
Playing as Peter Parker is a pure joy. Not only do you get to experience the man behind the mask by actually doing some tasks at the feast shelter or even at his science lab, but you also get to get a better perspective as to who this Peter is. And alongside of playing as the intellectual individual side of Spider-Man with Peter Parker, you can also experience some Mary Jane Watson gameplay by doing some investigative journalism during sections of the game's story. Both Peter and MJ have their standout moments during their individual gameplay sections, and every time one was finished, I always was left wanting more. Plus, the chemistry that Peter Parker and Mary Jane share with each other is easily one of the biggest highlights about the game. And that is a huge testament to the incredibly talented voice cast that this game features, ranging from incredible talents such as Yuri Lowenthal, Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, Stephen O'Young, Nicole Elise, and many more.
Thank you.
And without a doubt, the best performance in this game hands down goes to Yuri Lowenthal as Spider-Man. There have been a lot of different actors who have portrayed Spider-Man in previous video games, but nothing can compare to how Yuri delivers his performance in this one. The massive vocal range that Yuri carries when playing both Peter Parker and Spider-Man is simply astounding. Whenever Peter Parker's on screen, you receive a really youthful and energetic vibe. And as for when our friendly neighborhood webhead's on the screen, Yuri's voice goes more charismatic and much more heroic than he usually does as Peter. But I know what you're all thinking. The name of the game's called Marvel's Spider-Man, not Marvel's Peter Parker or Marvel's Mary Jane, so what could be better than playing as both these characters?
This is a trick question, isn't it?
And this is where we get to the heart of the matter. New York City is your own personal playground, and with Spider-Man donning a brand new suit, a whole vast array of gadgets, and a brand new set of combos, he's ready to go out there and save the day just like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man would. And to summarize it in one sentence, everything is absolutely sensational. The visual beauty and the architectural realism to this Marvel's New York is unlike any open world I've ever seen before. With all the main state New York landmarks popping out throughout the city like Times Square, Central Park, the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, and much more, this is just a small amount of what you can expect when exploring the entirety of the city. And since this universe does take place within Marvel's New York, you can definitely expect some major Marvel landmarks to pop out throughout the open world. Look hard enough and you may hear Spidey give some background about a certain area that he's visiting.
I wonder if King T'Challa got his powers from being bitten by a radioactive panther.
But besides the overall aesthetic of the city, everything else in the game is visually mind-blowing. Ranging from the high fidelity of the textures and graphics that are held within Spider-Man's multitude of suits to the abundancy of New York citizens walking throughout the city, this is one of the most mind-blowing games to ever be released on the PlayStation 4. And if you time them just right, you'll actually be able to gather some really beautiful looking shots of Spider-Man swinging throughout the city to make it look even more cinematic than it already is. Especially when composer John Paisano's incredibly orchestral score kicks in when traversing throughout the city, you feel even more triumphant than you have ever felt before. But of course, no real Spider-Man game is complete without the addition of a massively packed New York City to explore, along with a plethora of side activities to keep you entertained. And of course, the make or break factor for any open world Spider-Man game is obviously the inclusion of the fluid traversal system with the web swinging. And I can assure you, Insomniac and Marvel deliver on all these fronts and more. With Marvel's New York being 4 to 6 times bigger than Insomniac's last open world game with Sunset Overdrive, along with there being a total of 9 districts to explore, you're gonna have an absolute blast going from one end of the city to the next. The city is alive in more ways than one, and the hustle and bustle feeling of New York City has never felt more real. Not only is the Big Apple truly the city that never sleeps, but there's also tons of pedestrians that make it so. Even though Spidey is a superhero that spends most of his time swinging high above the skyline of New York City, you can go on ground level and check out what's happening in the streets below. This can range from pedestrians doing their own day-to-day tasks or even interacting with Spidey himself. And if you ever feel tired of web swinging, you can always go within the New York City subway to use as a fast travel system. Or if you ever want to know what people are thinking about Spider-Man when he's doing his heroic deeds, you can always go in the in-game social media page to check on what the citizens think of Spider-Man's antics, or even listen to a podcast from J. Jonah Jameson.
She's just in it to promote herself, which I think is absolutely despicable. Now don't go away. Just the Facts with J. Jonah Jameson will be right back after this important message about how you can buy my book.
But that's not all. Even when you're done exploring the city at your heart's desire, there's also a boatload of side missions to keep you occupied. And these particular events can range from lots of different things, such as hacking satellite dishes that can reveal more parts of the map, doing missions for Taskmaster, collecting backpacks that Peter left up throughout the city over his 8 years of being Spider-Man, doing research stations for your best pal Harry, and collecting pigeons?
I've been looking everywhere for the rest of them, but with my bad leg and all...
You know what? I get around. This pigeon knows the city better than I do.
And that's not all, everyone. Besides Insomniac creating a ginormous open world filled with tons of side activities to partake in, they've also completely innovated the traversal and combat systems that we've seen in previous Spider-Man games. The swinging is faster and more fluid than it's ever felt before, along with it being completely momentum and physics-based, and the webs indeed attached to buildings. And since Peter's been Spider-Man for 8 years, he's fully developed all the unique ways on how he can traverse throughout the city. This can range from precisely web zipping to a perch point and boosting off of it in order to gain massive speed, along with wall running across buildings. And if you ever feel like adding more style to your swinging, you can also access an unlockable upgrade of air tricks that will also gain Spider-Man experience points whenever pulling one off successfully. And along with Spider-Man's parkour abilities and his charge jump upgrade, this is easily one of the best iterations of Spider-Man's traversal that we have ever seen in a video game. Plus, if you know how to mix and match all these moves together, you can pull off some seriously cool stunts when traversing around New York. And as you continue to level up Spider-Man throughout the game, you'll also be able to upgrade Spider-Man's swing speed, making him even faster than what he already was. And just like the game's web swinging, the combat has also taken major steps in the right direction. Not only does Spider-Man acrobatically improvise all the combat moves that he pulls off in the game, he also takes inspiration from real-life fighting styles like capoeira, lucha libre, and more. And with the 3 tiers of the upgrade tree from Defender, Innovator, and Web Slinger, Spider-Man will get more and more powerful as you keep upgrading him throughout the progression of the game. Even though Peter's been Spider-Man for a while now, and he already has a cool array of moves to begin with, the more you play, the more you'll unlock unique combos to take on enemies with. These upgrades come in very handy when surrounded by a mob of enemies all at the same time, along with the addition of unique suit powers tailored to Spider-Man's specific costumes. Not only do these suits have some pretty unique and distinct features attached to them, but they also come equipped with a special power that you can use on your foes. Some of these suit powers could focus more on an area of effect like attack, or they can focus more about honing in on one enemy to take them out quicker. And just like the traversal, you start off the game with some pretty spider-like moves, but as you keep playing, you'll eventually discover more advanced maneuvers to take on your enemies with. This can easily range from using environmental takedowns to knock out your enemies quicker, or even using Peter's intellectuality to take the enemies out using gadgets. And to put it simply, the traversal and combat within this game is the farthest thing from being repetitive. Every time I got into a fight with the enemies in the game, I always discovered something new about the combat, whether that was using more of Spider-Man's webs or using more aerial takedowns. takedowns than I normally would. And as for the web swinging, it truly never gets old.
Officers near Devil's Shelf, please report to the scene.
In the end, everybody, after anxiously waiting over 2 years for this highly anticipated Spider-Man game, I can satisfyingly say it definitely surpasses all of my expectations and is easily the greatest Spider-Man game of all time. With rock-solid traversal and very satisfying combat, along with a huge city with tons of activities to partake in, there is a lot of variety going on within this game. Plus, being able to take time to appreciate the narrative of the story by playing as Peter Parker and Mary Jane, along with experiencing some very cinematic boss fights, is just the cherry on top of this amazing package. And even though I can't talk too much about the story without discussing spoilers, I would just like to say this is one of the best Spider-Man stories that's ever been created, and it brought tears to my eyes when I actually was beating the game. To me, Marvel's Spider-Man is the true embodiment of what it means to be our favorite wall crawler. And seeing how Marvel's Spider-Man is truly a game that was made by the fans for the fans truly makes it even more impactful for me when I was playing it myself. This has easily been my most anticipated game of all time, and after having beaten it to 100% completion, I can say it has delivered on all fronts and more, which is why I've decided to give Marvel's Spider-Man a solid 10 out of 10 rating, and it's also my personal pick for Game of the Year. In my humble opinion, Marvel's Spider-Man isn't just the best Spidey game of all time, but rather the greatest superhero game ever made. And after this incredible 2-year-long journey, Insomniac and Marvel have finally shown us all what it means to be greater. And there you have it, everybody. That is my review for Marvel's Spider-Man exclusively on PlayStation 4. And once again, huge thank you to PlayStation, Sony, Marvel Games, and Insomniac Games for actually granting me early access to a early review copy of Marvel's Spider-Man. The whole reason why I was able to actually be given this golden opportunity is because all the support that all of you have given me over these past 2 years. This has literally been the journey of a lifetime for me. Insomniac and Marvel and Sony and PlayStation, with making this incredible game, have actually allowed me to appreciate Spider-Man more on a personal level, have actually inspired me to pursue my dreams to become a content creator and actually be able to interview all these amazing developers and people working on this game. Has been the journey of a lifetime, and I'm so happy that I've actually been able to experience this journey with all of you. And don't worry, guys, I'm not going anywhere. This is just the beginning for me, and without all of you supporting me every step of the way, I wouldn't be here without all of you. So everybody, again, thank you for everything.
The Spidey Squad. My one and only fan club. When Jameson's going off on me, it helps to remember they're out there.